They say the truth doesn't just break you, it strips you bare. One moment, you're wrapped in everything you thought was real, and the next, you're standing in the ruins, asking how you didn't see it coming. Cheating billionaire sells house and kicks out pregnant wife. CEO comes to her rescue. The sweltering summer sun cast its harsh rays on the pristine driveway, but the heat outside was nothing compared to the fire raging within Camila Hayes's heart. Mere months ago, her world had sparkled with the promise of a fairy tale future. Married to the charming millionaire Logan Hayes, pregnant with their first child, and living in a luxurious estate most would only see in magazines. But a single phone call had shattered her illusions, unveiling secrets she never imagined, and now she stood on the brink of losing everything. Help arrives from the most unexpected source. Julian Carter, a powerful and enigmatic CEO poised to rescue her broken heart. Camila had grown up in the small town of Maple Hollow, where dusty roads led to one-story houses, and the biggest excitement each year was the summer carnival. Raised with modest means by her mother Sandra, who worked in the local diner, and her father Walter, a retired firefighter, Camila learned the value of honesty and hard work from an early age. She often dreamt of escaping small-town life, envisioning towering skyscrapers, luxurious ball gowns, and the swirl of city lights around her. But she never expected to cross paths with a man like Logan Hayes, a rising business magnate who seemingly fell from the heavens into her life. They met at a charity gala in the heart of downtown Crestview, a city bursting with glamour and ambition. Camila had attended on a friend's pass, an unexpected last-minute invitation from her old high school buddy Elena, now a successful marketing strategist. Camila felt out of place among the glittering crowd in expensive designer attire, while she wore a modest maroon dress from a clearance rack. Yet there was something about her unassuming grace and natural kindness that captured Logan Hayes' eye the moment he walked into the room. He was tall, handsome, and confident in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. At 32, he was already known in the business world for his sharp mind. Down on her humble origins, Logan appeared captivated. By the end of the night, he asked for her number, promising to call soon. He wasn't lying. Camila discovered he was persistent, calling and texting every day. Flowers arrived at her doorstep, and weekend getaways became frequent. His attention was intoxicating, the kind she'd only read about in novels. And before she had time to catch her breath, Camila found herself checking her phone every hour, waiting for his name to light up the screen. Logan Hayes had swept her off her feet. A year later, they married in a lavish ceremony held at the Willow Bend Grand Hotel, overlooking a serene lake. It was a wedding right out of a fairy tale. Chandeliers glittering like diamonds, an aisle strewn with white rose petals, and a string quartet playing softly as Camila walked toward Logan with tears in her eyes. Their vows spoke of eternal love, partnership, and devotion. In that blissful moment, Camila believed her life had aligned perfectly, as though the universe had granted her every wish. But amid the perfection, she caught a flicker in Logan's eyes, a momentary distance, like his mind had drifted somewhere far away. It passed quickly, and he smiled, but something about it left a chill down her spine. But even as she basked in the glow of her new life, there were subtle cracks. She couldn't name them at first, small warning signs. She noticed Logan was prone to mood swings. His phone seemed to ring at odd hours, and once in a while, he would disappear for entire weekends, claiming business emergencies. One night, she woke to find him whispering urgently on the balcony. When she stepped closer, he abruptly ended the call and blamed it on a late investor from Europe. He kissed her forehead and told her to go back to bed. She tried to believe him. Yet every time doubt crept into Camila's mind, Logan would appear with a bouquet of pink garden roses, her favorite, and a reassuring smile. For the next 2 years, it was easy to overlook these inconsistencies. After all, Logan's business soared. Their new mansion, Hayes Ridge Estate, became the envy of neighbors, and Camila discovered she was pregnant with their first child. That day, Logan scooped her up in his arms, spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. She believed that moment of unbridled joy was the first step toward a perfect life. Little did she know, it was also the calm before the storm. As the months rolled by, the glow of pregnancy gave Camila a new sense of purpose. She spent her days preparing the nursery, flipping through parenting books, and feeling the first flutter of life inside her belly. She often caught Logan gazing at her, eyes filled with an emotion that teetered between awe and something more complex, something that felt almost like regret. Once she asked him softly, "Is everything okay?" He simply kissed her hand and said, "You're beautiful," but never answered the question. One afternoon, Camila decided to surprise Logan by bringing him lunch at his downtown office. She prepared a homemade meal. He loved rosemary chicken with roasted vegetables, and she carefully packed it in a casserole dish. The glass windows of Hayes Capital Group's headquarters shone under the sun, seeming to reflect the power and prestige Logan's name had built. When Camila entered the reception area, the staff recognized her instantly, smiling and greeting her with warmth. "Mr. Hayes is in a meeting, Miss Hayes. Shall I let him know you're here?" Logan's assistant, Maya Jennings, asked politely. Camila nodded. "It's just a surprise visit. I won't bother him if he's busy." The assistant disappeared behind the ornate wooden doors. Moments later, she returned, looking slightly flustered. "He says he's finishing up and will be right with you. Would you like something to drink while you wait?" "Just water, please," Camila replied, sitting in the plush waiting area. She couldn't help but scan the array of magazines on the glass table. There were real estate trade journals with Logan's face on the cover, articles praising him for his business acumen. As she flipped through a glossy spread, she overheard a hushed argument on the other side of the wall through a slight crack in the door. She recognized Logan's voice, low and urgent, but couldn't make out the exact words. Another voice, a woman's, responded just as sharply. Through the mumbled conversation, Camila caught her own name once, perhaps twice, as well as a phrase that sounded suspiciously like, "Don't let her find out." Her heart sank. Then the voices stopped. Moments later, Logan emerged with a tense smile. "Cam," he greeted, walking toward her in long, purposeful strides. "I didn't know you were coming by." She forced a bright smile, trying to quell the flutter of apprehension in her stomach. "I thought I'd bring you lunch. You've been so busy and I wanted to do something nice." Logan kissed her cheek, the warmth of his lips reassuring yet slightly rushed. "That's so thoughtful, honey. Thank you." He took the casserole dish from her hands as if it weighed a ton. "Let me walk you to my office." Inside his spacious corner suite, Camila noticed something odd. A faint trace of perfume, not hers, lingered in the air. She glanced around, seeing no one, but the plush leather couch cushions looked recently disturbed. She tried to dismiss the worry, reminding herself that staff, clients, and business associates came and went all the time, yet doubt crept through her veins like an icy chill. They shared an awkward lunch. Logan talked about meetings, upcoming deals, and expansion plans, his voice too loud and too animated. Camila watched him closely, trying to catch any inconsistency in his words, but he was careful. Still, he never quite met her eyes. Days turned into weeks, and Camila grew more aware of Logan's late-night texts, secretive phone calls, and the increasing distance between them. Sometimes she'd find him standing by the window, staring into the city lights, lost in thought. There were moments when she'd call his name softly, only for him to flinch, as if startled to find her still there. Other times, he would come home at 3 in the morning, claiming he had business calls in different time zones. If she dared to question him, his face would darken with a defensive anger she had never seen before. Once, he slammed the door hard enough to shake a picture frame loose from the wall, muttering that she was paranoid, and didn't understand how much pressure he was under. Her own motherly instinct told her something was amiss. She tried to quell her fears by focusing on the baby, but worry gnawed at her relentlessly. She spoke to her mother on the phone, trying to sound cheerful, but Sandra's voice tightened with concern. "Are you sure everything's okay?" Camila had lied and said yes. One day, while sorting baby clothes in the immaculate walk-in closet, she found a receipt for a diamond necklace from an upscale boutique, dated just 2 days prior. Her heart soared for a brief moment. Maybe it was a surprise gift for her. It would have been just like Logan. Grand, over-the-top, guilt-laced generosity after another long week of emotional distance. But as she dug deeper, she found a smaller slip of paper with a scribbled note. "Meet me at the Avalon Hotel, Suite 304. written in a rushed scrawl, like whoever wrote it wasn't used to sneaking around. Her vision blurred with tears. The date on the note was today. That evening, Logan claimed to have a late meeting again, delivering the same stale excuses about potential investors flying in from Singapore. Camila's heart pounded relentlessly as she forced a neutral expression. Her mouth smiled, but her hands trembled behind her back. She already knew. The note in his pocket told a different story. After Logan left, she carefully tucked her swelling belly into a loose coat. Fearing confrontation but driven by an instinctive need for truth, she took a cab to the Avalon Hotel. Her mind spun with worst-case scenarios. Perhaps Logan was having an affair, or maybe he was dealing with shady business associates. Neither possibility comforted her. In truth, the idea of him cheating somehow felt more painful, more personal, than even financial betrayal. The Avalon was a 5-star property, the kind of place where the well-to-do enjoyed lavish weekend getaways and discreet encounters behind gilded doors. The marbled lobby smelled of fresh orchids and bergamot. Camila's nerves were raw. Her steps were tentative on the gleaming floor. She took the elevator to the 3rd floor, dread clogging her throat. The hallway stretched endlessly before her. Suite 304 was near the end, beneath a sconce that bathed the plush carpet in soft golden light. She paused, trembling. Every fiber of her being wanted to turn back, to remain blissfully ignorant. But the image of that receipt for a diamond necklace pricked her heart, fueling a courage she hadn't known. She paused. Slowly, she lifted her hand and knocked. After a few seconds, the door opened slightly. A woman stood there. Tall, elegant, and undeniably beautiful. Her silky black hair cascaded over her shoulders, and she wore a form-fitting, expensive-looking dress. There was a faint scent of jasmine perfume wafting through the doorway, Camila's least favorite kind. Confusion and alarm flickered in the woman's eyes. "Who are you?" the woman asked, her voice wavering. Camila cleared her throat, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I'm Logan Hayes' wife. Is he here?" A flicker of guilt crossed the woman's face. It was brief but telling, like a shadow crossing her soul. Then came Logan. His features twisted into a mask of horror the moment he saw Camila standing at the threshold. His tie was crooked, his shirt partially unbuttoned. He looked like a man caught mid-sin. "Camila, what are you doing here?" Camila's blood ran cold. The scene in front of her confirmed every suspicion that had haunted her. She felt the baby shift in her womb, as though the child sensed the searing tension. "Is this?" she stammered, blinking back tears. "Is she?" Logan ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting between Camila and the unknown woman. "I can explain," he managed, though his voice lacked conviction. The woman bit her lip, stepping back into the suite and giving Logan space to slip into the hallway. The corridor felt suffocating, the walls closing in on them. Camila could hear the soft clink of wine glasses behind the half-closed door. It made her stomach churn. "I told you not to come here," he hissed to the woman, before turning back to Camila. The tone was sharp, cold, like she was the interruption in their evening. "Look, let's talk about this at home. This isn't what it looks like." Camila's heart ached, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. She wanted to scream, to crumble, to disappear. But her voice came out steady, almost too calm. "It looks like you're having an affair," she said quietly. "Is that the truth?" Logan's silence was louder than any confession. He tried to grasp her hand, but she pulled away. His touch burned, like betrayal itself had taken form. The reality of betrayal roared in her mind, overshadowing any rational thought. She turned away, feeling her entire body quake with heartbreak, anger, and a wrenching sense of loss. "Camila, wait!" Logan called after her, but she ignored him, pressing the elevator button repeatedly. She caught a glimpse of the other woman in the doorway, arms folded, as if she were simply inconvenienced by the appearance of the unexpected wife. There wasn't guilt in her eyes, only annoyance, as if Camila had ruined a dinner reservation. The final blow to Camila's heart was Logan's hesitant stance, caught between chasing his pregnant wife and remaining in the arms of his mistress. The elevator doors parted, and Camila stepped inside. She watched Logan's face contort with indecision, but he didn't move as the doors sealed shut. She felt her world collapsing. Every promise of everlasting love, every vow, every happy dream of the future slipped through her fingers like sand, leaving only a haunting emptiness behind. After discovering Logan's affair, Camila fell into a numb haze. She barely ate, rarely slept, and often stared aimlessly out the window of Hayes Ridge Estate, seeing only the flickering fragments of her broken dreams. Her once vibrant world now felt muted, every corner of the grand house echoing with silence that used to be filled with laughter, shared meals, and whispered dreams of a future now dissolving. Logan tried to do damage control, feeding her halting explanations about business, stress, and a so-called temporary lapse in judgment. But the truth was undeniable. He had betrayed her trust, and there was another woman in his life. Each time he opened his mouth, his eyes avoided hers. He couldn't even look her in the face as he spun his half-truths. Despite his attempts at reconciliation, he remained evasive, slipping out at odd hours and dodging her questions with practiced ease. His kisses felt obligatory, his hugs hollow. Camila began to feel like a ghost living inside her own life. Weeks stretched on, and her pregnancy advanced, but she felt more alone than ever. The soft flutter of her baby's kicks were the only moments that reminded her she still had a purpose, a reason to keep going. To make matters worse, she began to sense a growing tension among the household staff, whispers that stopped the moment she entered a room, worried glances cast in her direction. Even the housekeeper, who once chatted warmly with her in the mornings, now looked away with a guilt-ridden frown. One evening, a moving van rumbled into the driveway, unannounced. At first, Camila thought it might be a surprise furniture delivery for the nursery. Curious, she stepped outside into the crisp air, only to see two men loading paintings and boxes from the garage into the truck. "Excuse me," she called, her voice laced with alarm. "What's going on here?" One of the movers glanced at her, unsure. "We're just following Mr. Hayes' instructions, ma'am. This stuff is going into storage." She frowned, confusion swirling. "What storage? Nobody told me we were clearing out the house." Her heart began to race. A tight knot of dread began forming in her chest. Logan appeared from around the corner, wearing a strained expression. "Camila, I've been meaning to tell you. We're downsizing some of the property to free up assets." Her stomach twisted. "Free up assets? We have more than enough, Logan. What are you really doing?" He looked away, sighing. "I'm selling Hayes Ridge Estate." He said it flatly, as if announcing a canceled dinner reservation. The words hit her like a physical blow. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the baby move within, as though responding to her sudden turmoil. "What do you mean? You're selling it? This is our home." Logan's eyes flickered with guilt, but there was also an unmistakable resolve. And something else, a flicker of fear, like a man trying to stay afloat in waters he never expected to wade into. "I made an offer, and it was accepted. The paperwork is almost finalized." Tears blurred her vision. "You never even talked to me about this. Where are we going to live? This is our child's home too." He stepped closer, but she backed away. For the first time, she saw him not as a husband, but as a stranger with cold calculations behind his eyes. "Look, I know it's sudden, but trust me, it's for the best. Things are complicated right now, and I need the liquidity. I have a lot of investments that are risky. I have to protect our future." But his words rang hollow. She could see it was more than business. There was a desperation in his voice that suggested hidden debts, possibly connected to his illicit affairs or reckless spending. Perhaps he was already funneling money somewhere else, somewhere she wasn't supposed to look. That evening, the mansion felt like a hollow shell. Camila moved through the emptying rooms, each one stripped of memories and warmth. Silently, she ran her hand along the walls where she'd once hung their wedding photos. Now, bare nails jutted from the plaster. It was as if every trace of their life together was being erased. When the final piece of furniture was carried out, Logan dropped another bombshell. "You'll need to find somewhere else to stay," he said brusquely. "The new owners will be moving in soon. It's better if you go back to Maple Hollow for a while." She stared at him in disbelief. "You're kicking me out? Now? When I'm 7 months pregnant?" He avoided her gaze. "It's not like that, but we both need space." Camila's voice broke. "Space? We're married. This is our child." Logan's expression hardened. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The house is gone, and I need you out of my hair while I sort things out. You'll be taken care of financially." The finality in his tone crushed her. Devastated and betrayed, Camila realized in that moment that the man she married no longer existed. In his place stood a stranger who valued money, secrets, and shallow comforts over his wife and unborn child. Rain battered the windows of the nearly vacant mansion as Camila hurried to pack her belongings into an overnight bag. She had no energy for anything else, her hands shaking with a blend of rage and heartbreak. Logan claimed he had booked her a room at a small hotel near the outskirts of the city until she could figure out a more long-term solution. The indifference in his voice replayed in her mind, echoing with brutal finality. Through the storm, a taxi eventually arrived, its headlights carving through the darkness. Camila stood at the threshold, belly heavy with new life, heart heavy with sorrow. She turned back for one last look at the place she had once called home. Yet all she saw were shadows and memories too painful to relive. Without another word, she stepped into the cab, feeling more alone than ever. The hotel Logan arranged was far from glamorous. The chipped paint on the outside walls and flickering neon sign read, "Sunrise Inn," a place teetering on the edge of disrepair. Inside, the reception area smelled faintly of mildew, with worn carpet that had seen better decades. The receptionist greeted her with mild disinterest, handing over a key to a room on the second floor. Camila's mind was clouded by a swirl of thoughts. She could phone her parents in Maple Hollow, but they had enough financial struggles and health issues of their own. She didn't want to burden them. Elena, her closest friend, had moved across the country. And how could Camila ask for help from others when her own millionaire husband had just cast her aside? The tiny hotel room had a single bed, a wobbly dresser, and a small TV bolted to the wall. The flickering overhead light made the space feel even more oppressive. Collapsing onto the bed, she let the tears come. Hot, bitter tears that refused to stop. Tears for the broken promises, the betrayal, and the terror of facing motherhood alone. Hours turned into days, and still she received no call from Logan. The phone would ring occasionally with a concerned voice from the estate staff checking in, but they clearly had orders not to intervene beyond superficial niceties. Worse yet, Camila discovered that the credit card Logan had given her was suddenly declined. She was left with only a small emergency fund in her personal savings, a fraction of what she needed to sustain herself for long. Anxiety gnawed at her. She tried to call Logan directly, but he rarely picked up. And when he did, his tone was cold and hurried, always making excuses to cut the conversation short. She realized with a hollow ache that their marriage was effectively over. One night, as she paced the confines of the cramped room, she felt an intense pressure in her abdomen. Panic set in. What if there were complications? At 7 months along, the baby was viable, but every day carried new risks. She clung to her phone, scanning her limited contacts, feeling more terrified than ever that she might face an emergency alone. In a desperate moment, she decided she had to find a job. Some way to support herself, even if it meant returning to Maple Hollow. She would no longer rely on Logan's whims. Determined, she dried her tears, flicked on the TV for some background noise, and opened her laptop. She began scouring job postings, resolute in her new mission. That's when she stumbled across an online ad for an administrative position at a firm called Carter & Wells Innovations. The position promised competitive pay, excellent benefits, and, most importantly, a welcoming environment. It felt like fate, dangling a slim lifeline in front of her. Her fingers trembled over the keyboard as she submitted her resume, heart pounding at the thought of stepping into the unknown. It was better than her current nightmare. Little did she know, that single click would alter the course of her life forever, setting off a chain of events that would pit her against Logan's treachery in ways she could never have anticipated. Weeks later, Camila found herself standing nervously in the sleek, modern lobby of Carter & Wells Innovations. Polished floors gleamed underfoot, and towering glass walls offered a sweeping view of the city's skyline, bathed in the morning sun. Camila clutched her small, all-leather portfolio, hoping to impress the hiring manager with more than just her limited administrative experience. She needed this job badly, not just for income, but to restore her shattered sense of self-worth. The receptionist guided her to a conference room. As she waited, she smoothed her professional yet forgiving dress over her pregnant belly, determined not to let potential employers see her as a liability. She rehearsed her talking points in her mind. She had assisted Logan in managing some of his finances, though she would never mention his name, not now, and had experience coordinating events for charity. She could handle spreadsheets, scheduling, and anything else they threw at her. This job was her chance to build a new life. A tall, middle-aged woman stepped in, smiling warmly. "Camila Hayes?" "Yes, that's me," Camila replied, rising to shake her hand. "I'm Melissa Bryant, Head of Human Resources. Welcome to Carter & Wells Innovations. Please have a seat." The interview began with standard questions, her background, skill sets, and future aspirations. But halfway through, Melissa suddenly glanced at the time on her phone and offered a quick apology. "Mr. Carter wants to meet you personally," she explained, her eyes lighting up with a mix of respect and nerves. "He takes a direct interest in new hires for certain positions, especially those he feels might fit well in his executive circle." Camila's heart fluttered. Julian Carter was legendary in the business world, a self-made millionaire whose philanthropic efforts were equally impressive. In her mind, he was an untouchable figure, someone she'd only ever seen in business articles or mentioned at the periphery of high society events. Anxiety and excitement warred inside her. Moments later, Julian Carter himself entered the room. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried an air of calm authority. There was an energy about him that seemed to fill the space, yet his gaze was gentle as he assessed her kindly. "Miss Hayes," he greeted, extending a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Melissa mentioned you have a strong background in administrative support and event coordination." Camila fought the urge to fidget. She reminded herself to appear confident. "Yes, I've worked on several high-profile charity events in the past," she explained. She left out the fact that most of her exposure had come through Logan's circle. Julian nodded. "Impressive. Tell me," he continued, "what do you believe sets you apart from other candidates?" She swallowed, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm resourceful and resilient," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I've faced a lot of personal challenges recently, and I had to learn how to adapt quickly. I believe that mindset can be an asset to any team, especially when time is short and stakes are high." Julian studied her for a long moment. Camila worried she had revealed too much, but then he smiled, a genuine, understanding expression. "That's a very honest answer," he said. "And I appreciate honesty above all else. We're in a fast-paced environment here. People who can think on their feet and persist through adversity often do well in my company." He asked a few more questions, drilling down on her organizational methods, her comfort with technology, and how she handled conflict. Each time, Camila answered as best she could, fueled by a determination born from desperation. The interview concluded on a positive note, and Julian thanked her for her time. Melissa walked her out, explaining that decisions would be made by the end of the week. Camila thanked her graciously, then left the building and exhaled a shaky breath. She had never felt so nervous, yet oddly hopeful. Something about Julian Carter's presence reassured her, as though he saw more than just a pregnant woman in over her head. True to their word, Carter & Wells Innovations called Camila 2 days later, offering her a position as an administrative assistant with possibilities for future growth. Relief flooded her. She said yes without hesitation. Unknown to her at the time, this job would do more than pay the bills. It would open doors to new connections, new hopes, and the possibility of a future that didn't revolve around Logan's betrayal. Camila's first day at Carter & Wells Innovations was a whirlwind of introductions, onboarding paperwork, and learning company protocols. She was assigned to the 12th floor, a sleek environment where various departmental heads and executives worked collaboratively under Julian Carter's leadership. Her immediate supervisor, Rachel Monroe, was a poised and direct operations manager who welcomed her warmly, despite the flurry of deadlines. "You'll be helping me organize executive meetings, manage Mr. Carter's schedule when needed, and coordinate with outside vendors for charity events," Rachel explained, showing her to a tidy cubicle with a panoramic view of the city. "Any questions? Don't hesitate to ask," Rachel said. Camila nodded, trying to contain her excitement. She carefully arranged a framed ultrasound picture on her desk, a reminder that, no matter how chaotic things got, her child was the guiding star of her life. She couldn't afford to fail. The day passed quickly, in a blur of spreadsheets, phone calls, and scheduling software tutorials. By late afternoon, Rachel mentioned that Julian Carter wanted a brief update on upcoming charitable initiatives. "He's in the middle of a conference call," she said, handing Camila a file. "But once he's done, go in and give him a summary." Camila swallowed hard. She had never imagined she'd interact with the CEO again so soon, and her nerves spiked at the thought. Nevertheless, she took a deep breath, clutched the file, and waited patiently outside Julian's office. When the door finally opened, a harried-looking executive walked out, giving her a polite nod. Inside, Julian sat at a large mahogany desk that contrasted with the modern aesthetic of the rest of the floor. The office itself was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a single piece of abstract art adorning the wall. He motioned for her to enter with a genial smile. "Miss Hayes, come in. How's your first day going?" His voice was calm, though she sensed the undercurrent of a busy schedule. She stepped forward, heart thrumming. "Good, Mr. Carter. I'm still getting the hang of everything, but Rachel has been very helpful." "That's what I like to hear. Now, what updates do you have for me?" She handed him the file, summarizing the details about an upcoming fundraiser for children's literacy. As she spoke, he asked pointed questions, zeroing in on budget allocations and projected attendance. Despite her nervousness, she found herself answering with confidence, thanks to her past experience coordinating events in Logan's social circle. Julian leaned back in his chair, studying her as she finished. "Well done, Miss Hayes. You're thorough." He paused, then added, "I know it can be daunting to jump into a new environment, especially when you're expecting a child. Let's ensure you have the support you need." Heat rose to her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I appreciate that." For a moment, his gaze lingered on her, a flicker of compassion in his eyes. Then he nodded, returning to a stack of documents on his desk. "Keep up the good work. If you need anything, my door is open." She left the office with a sense of triumph, tempered by relief. As she settled back at her cubicle, she couldn't help reflecting on how different Julian Carter was from Logan. Where Logan was brash and often dismissive of others, Julian projected a quiet confidence and a genuine concern for his employees' well-being. There was something grounding about him, like the calm in a storm Camila never saw coming. Over the next few weeks, Camila found her workload steadily increasing, and surprisingly, she thrived on the challenge. She streamlined email communication, organized more efficient filing systems, and even helped Rachel craft a detailed timeline for an upcoming gala event. Her days were full, her mind occupied, and for the first time in a long while, she felt purposeful again. Occasionally, Julian would stop by her desk to ask a quick question or request a document. Each interaction left her more at ease in his presence. Sometimes their eyes lingered just a second too long, an unspoken understanding hanging between them like morning mist, uncertain but unmistakably there. Despite her progress at work, Camila's personal life remained fraught. Logan occasionally texted, mostly with curt demands about signing certain documents related to the sale of the estate. He never asked about her health or the baby. Not a single "how are you" or "is the baby okay?" Just transactions, cold and detached. Each time she glanced at her phone and saw his name, a bitter ache returned. But she refused to let his neglect define her future. Instead of crying, she closed her eyes, took a breath, and opened another spreadsheet. This was her new power, progress. Little by little, day by day, she was forging a new path. She was alone, but no longer helpless. Her strength no longer came from hoping someone would save her, but from realizing she was saving herself. And in the quiet corners of her mind, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could build a life for herself and her child without Logan's name overshadowing them at every turn. While Camila embraced her new start, Logan Hayes found himself grappling with mounting problems. The real estate market had taken a downturn. Several of his high-profile projects teetered on the edge of bankruptcy, and rumors swirled that he had funneled corporate funds into personal ventures, including lavish gifts for his mistress, Isla. Worse yet, the sale of Hayesridge Estate hadn't yielded the financial security Logan had hoped for. It merely provided a temporary stopgap, and the more he scrambled, the clearer it became. The empire he'd built was sinking under the weight of his own arrogance. Late one night, As Logan paced his penthouse in the city, one he'd secretly rented for rendezvous with Isla, he scrolled through emails that confirmed what he feared. His company's liquidity was dangerously low. Investors were pulling out, uneasy about whispers of scandal and mismanagement. Even the staff sensed trouble. Some had already begun to look for work elsewhere, anticipating the worst. The glass walls of his office, once symbols of power, now reflected only the anxiety etched across his face. Meanwhile, Isla lounged on a plush sofa, swirling a glass of red wine. She flicked her gaze over Logan with a bored expression. "You look stressed," she said, arching an eyebrow. "I thought selling that house was supposed to solve all our problems." Logan shot her a withering look. "Some of them, not all. Besides, I have bigger concerns right now." Logan sank into a leather armchair, running a hand through his hair. Despite his frustration, he was still seduced by Ila's beauty. She lounged across from him in a silk robe, legs crossed, her expression unreadable, like she was already planning her exit. He told himself their relationship had begun purely for excitement, a release from his dull, predictable marriage. But now he was left with a pregnant wife, a collapsing empire, and a mistress who seemed to care more about the next lavish trip than the ruinous state of his finances. What once felt like passion now resembled a transaction, one he was no longer sure he could afford. "You're not going to get my sympathy, if that's what you're fishing for," Ela said, taking another sip of wine. "You promised me a lifestyle, Logan. You said you had everything under control. If that's changed, maybe I should make other arrangements." His eyes narrowed. "Don't you dare threaten me. I've done everything for you. When things stabilize, we'll be back on track. Just be patient." His voice cracked on the last word, betraying a fear he couldn't hide. Isla shrugged dismissively. "I'm not interested in watching your downfall if there's nothing in it for me." She pulled her phone out and began scrolling, already disengaging from the conversation, from him. Logan stood abruptly, fists clenched. He'd never felt so cornered. The room spun for a moment, claustrophobic, suffocating, as he realized the very person he'd sacrificed everything for was ready to walk away the moment the money dried up. Staring at Isla, he realized that perhaps she'd been right all along. This was no grand romance, just a mutually beneficial arrangement that had run its course. The problem was, he had burned nearly all his bridges for her. He had gambled his marriage, his legacy, his identity, and now the house was on fire. And no one was staying to put it out. Camila, who once would have supported him through any crisis, was out of the picture, rightly so. And the staff he'd once commanded with absolute authority now doubted his ability to lead. Tossing his phone onto the coffee table, Logan strode toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city lights. He felt trapped in a gilded cage of his own making. Everything gleamed on the outside, but inside, the rot was spreading. In a rare moment of self-awareness, he wondered if kicking out Camila had been the worst mistake of his life. Swallowing the thought, he told himself it was too late to turn back. Pride, he reminded himself. Pride is all I have left. He had one last strategy in mind. A risky partnership with a foreign conglomerate that specialized in distressed real estate assets. If he could broker a deal, it might save his company from bankruptcy. If he failed, he'd lose everything. His reputation, his fortune, and even Ila's empty affections. And this time, there would be no one left to catch him. Yet the specter of Camila's eyes, brimming with hurt, haunted him. Despite his attempts to bury the guilt, a sliver of remorse gnawed at him. He pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the storm brewing outside. Thunder rumbled in the distance, mirroring the turmoil within his heart. He was Logan Hayes, after all. He could bend the world to his will. Or so he still believed. Morning light streamed into Camila's cramped hotel room. She stretched carefully, acutely aware of her swollen belly and the twinges of discomfort that came with approaching her 8th month. Despite the uncertainty of her living situation, Camila felt a growing sense of empowerment from her job. Every day at Carter & Wells Innovations reminded her that she was capable and valuable. On that particular morning, the ring of her cell phone startled her. She checked the screen. Sandra Hayes, Maple Hollow. Her mother. A wave of relief washed over her as she answered. "Mom, is everything okay?" Her mother's voice was choked with emotion. "Camila, your father's condition is getting worse. The doctors say his heart isn't responding well to treatment. I don't want to burden you, but we need help. Camila's chest constricted. She closed her eyes, tears burning behind her lids. Her father, Walter, had battled heart problems for years, but she hadn't realized his health had deteriorated so rapidly. Back when she and Logan were still united, they had helped cover some of the medical bills, but now she had only her modest new income. She pressed a hand to her forehead, trying to steady herself. I can come, but I don't have a place to stay in Maple Hollow right now. The line crackled with static before her mother responded softly, We'll figure it out together. Just come if you can. Ending the call, Camila felt torn. She had her job, her lifeline, but her father needed her. She told herself she'd explain her situation to Rachel, or even directly to Julian. Maybe she could arrange for remote work, or take a leave of absence. She wouldn't abandon her parents when they needed her most. After dressing, she headed to the office. The bus ride was unusually slow, each stop feeling like an eternity. Once inside the building, she spotted Rachel rushing through the foyer. Gathering her courage, Camila hurried to catch up and explain the family emergency. Rachel's eyes softened with compassion. I'm so sorry to hear that, Camila. If you need time off, we'll work something out. I'll talk to Mr. Carter. He's very understanding with family emergencies. Grateful, Camila nodded. Thank you. I don't want to lose this job, but my father. Say no more, Rachel interrupted kindly. I'll set a meeting with Mr. Carter after lunch. Let's see what we can arrange. All morning, Camila tried to focus on tasks, but her thoughts drifted constantly to her father's weary smile, her mother's anxious voice, and the baby swirling gently inside her womb. She worried about traveling in her condition, but she had no choice. Family came first. Finally, Rachel beckoned her to Julian Carter's office. Stepping inside, Camila felt that same calm reassurance from his presence. He sat behind his desk, scanning a proposal, but looked up and gestured for her to sit. Rachel tells me you have a family emergency, he said gently. Camila explained her father's worsening condition, her voice trembling. I need to go to Maple Hollow. At least for a short time. I'm not sure how to manage that with my responsibilities here. Julian listened intently, tapping a pen against the desk. I'm sorry about your father. Of course, family is paramount. We can arrange for you to work remotely as much as possible. Or if you need an official leave, we'll work out the details. Your position will remain secure. Gratitude nearly overwhelmed her. She had expected to grovel, to possibly lose her job. Thank you, Mr. Carter. I can't tell you how much this means to me. He nodded, concern etched on his features. Do you have a safe way to travel? You're quite far along in your pregnancy. She placed a protective hand over her belly. I'll take the train. It's a few hours, but I'll be careful. Julian exchanged a glance with Rachel. We have a corporate jet making a short trip tomorrow for an unrelated business matter. If it's not too intrusive, we could arrange for you to fly to a regional airport near Maple Hollow. It would be faster and more comfortable. Camila's eyes widened. The offer was generous beyond anything she'd expected. That would be incredible. I just don't want to impose. Julian offered a comforting smile. Nonsense. We take care of our own here. Let's finalize the details, and you focus on your family. She thanked him profusely, her heart swelling with unexpected relief. The echo of Logan's cold, dismissive remarks rang in her ears, reminding her just how stark the contrast was between her soon-to-be ex-husband's selfishness and Julian Carter's quiet kindness. And so, a plan was set. She would take a few personal days, possibly more, to be with her father. Little did she know this journey would not only force her to confront her past, but also pull Julian Carter further into the tangled web of her life. A path neither of them saw coming. The sleek, small corporate jet touched down at a regional airstrip just outside Maple Hollow. Camila gingerly stepped onto the tarmac, clutching a small carry-on. She was greeted by a driver Julian had arranged, holding a sign with her name. Though the gesture was meant to ease her burden, she felt a pang of guilt at the expense. Still, she reminded herself, Julian had insisted. As they drove the winding roads toward her parents' modest home, memories rushed back. The wildflowers she used to pick in the summer. The backyard where her father had taught her to ride a bike. The smell of fresh bread baking in her mother's kitchen. The driver pulled up to a faded white bungalow with a sagging porch. the paint peeling around the edges. Camila's throat constricted, seeing the signs of her parents' financial struggles so starkly. Her mother, Sandra, stood on the porch steps, worry carving lines into her once smooth face. She hurried to hug Camila, her eyes going immediately to her pregnant belly. "My baby," she whispered tearfully, cupping Camila's cheeks. "It's so good to see you." Tears burned in Camila's eyes as she returned the embrace. "How's Dad?" she asked. Sandra's gaze dropped. "He's inside. We got him home from the hospital. He hates staying there, but the doctors say we need to be prepared. His heart is just too weak." Dread weighed heavily on Camila, but she forced herself to be strong. She followed her mother inside, into a small living room where her father, Walter, lay propped in a recliner, oxygen tubes running to his nose. At the sight of Camila, a faint smile lit his weary face. "Camila," he rasped, holding out a trembling hand. She rushed to him, tears falling freely. She spent the afternoon by his side, sharing gentle updates about her life in the city, omitting the more painful details about Logan's betrayal. Despite his weakened condition, her father's eyes flickered with pride when she told him about her job at Carter & Wells Innovations. "That's my girl," he said, voice cracking. "Always knew you'd find a way." As evening approached, a neighbor brought over a casserole, and Sandra served it with quiet gratitude. Camila helped where she could, but her pregnancy limited her stamina. Exhausted, she lay down on the worn sofa in the living room, lulled to sleep by the comforting hum of the old floor fan. She awoke hours later to the soft sound of her parents talking in hushed voices. Walter's labored breathing sent jolts of fear through her, and she realized just how perilous his condition truly was. On unsteady feet, she rose to check on him. He squeezed her hand, trying to smile. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "I wish I could be stronger for you. I wanted to be there when my grandchild is born." His voice cracked, fragile like the thinning thread of time he was clinging to. A sob choked Camila's throat, and she knelt beside the recliner, pressing her cheek to his hand. She felt the calluses that once gripped a steering wheel and built a crib now soft and trembling. This man had been her anchor her whole life, and now he was slipping. "Don't say that, Dad. You will be there. We'll get you the best care. I'll figure something out." She said it like a vow, even though fear was coiled tight in her chest. Yet even as she spoke, the stark truth settled in her heart. Her father's time might be running out. She could see it in his eyes, in the way he lingered longer when looking at her, as if memorizing her face one last time. The next day passed in a blur of doctor's visits, medication schedules, and quiet worry. In a desperate move, Camila contacted Logan, hoping he might, just this once, step up and offer help for her father's medical bills. After all, he had once promised to treat her parents like his own. She stared at the phone screen for minutes before pressing call, rehearsing how she'd ask without sounding like she was begging, but the phone rang endlessly, unanswered. When she finally got through, he brushed her off with cold indifference. "That's not my responsibility," he said flatly. "I've got my own problems." There wasn't even a flicker of hesitation, no hint that he remembered the man who walked her down the aisle. Her anger flared. "You're my husband, Logan, or have you forgotten? My father is your family too." Logan scoffed. "We both know that's on paper only. Don't call me about this again." And just like that, the final thread of who he used to be snapped. The line went dead. Camila clutched the phone, tears stinging, not just from his cruelty, but from the shame of still hoping he might have a heart. She felt a familiar bitterness, the same helpless fury that had plagued her since he sold their home. But this time she also felt something stronger, a rising determination. She had someone depending on her now, and she refused to let her child grow up learning that survival meant silence. She would find a way to help her parents, even if it meant turning to others for assistance. The question was, who else could she rely on, if not Logan? With her savings nearly depleted and her father's condition growing dire, she needed more than just a paycheck. And then it struck her. Julian Carter's quiet kindness. His support might be the key to saving not just her father, but her entire future. He had once told her, "We take care of our own." Maybe he meant it. Maybe this time, someone wouldn't let her fall. Night settled over Maple Hollow, and Camila sat in her childhood bedroom, staring at her father's mounting hospital bills. Walter's condition had stabilized, but remained fragile. She was running out of time and money. With trembling fingers, she dialed Julian Carter, barely expecting him to pick up so late. He answered on the second ring. "Camila, what's wrong?" She explained her father's plight, her voice shaking with suppressed tears. "I wouldn't ask unless I had no other choice," she whispered. "I need help. Any form of financial assistance. I promise I'll repay you." Julian cut her off gently. "We have an emergency support program for employees. I'll make the arrangements, don't worry." His voice was calm, steady, the kind that wraps around you like a blanket on a winter night. Relief washed over her, so powerful it nearly stole her breath. Over the next few days, hospital fees were covered, and new treatment options opened up too. Camila stood in her parents' small living room, steeling herself as she examined the divorce papers spread across the table. She was finally taking the first real step to free herself from Logan Hayes. Though her father's health remained precarious, she took comfort in the familiar love surrounding her, and a glimmer of hope for the future. A knock at the door jarred her. She opened it, to find Logan. Disheveled, angry, his once confident bearing now replaced by desperation. Without waiting for an invitation, he pushed past her into the house. His gaze swept over the stack of documents, and he sneered. "So you're actually going through with this?" he demanded, picking up one of the papers. "Did you think I'd let you just walk away, with my money and my child?" Camila lifted her chin, her voice calm and unshaken. "You gave me no choice. You sold our home. You refused to help my father. You left me alone in a rundown hotel." She took a breath. "This marriage is over." Logan's eyes flashed. "You won't see a dime, and don't forget, I'm still the father of that baby." His tone bristled with threat. "I'll fight you, every step of the way." She clutched her pregnant belly protectively. "If you want to be in this child's life, then prove you can act like a father. Otherwise, the courts will hear how you abandoned me when I needed you most." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the low hiss of her father's oxygen machine in the adjoining room. With a final glare, Logan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Camila stood there trembling, tears pooling in her eyes. Her mother, Sandra, appeared from the kitchen, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "He won't change, no matter what he promises." Camila exhaled slowly and nodded. The woman she had once been, naive and hopeful, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, forged by heartbreak, and now responsible for a child who deserved a stable, loving life. Glancing at her father's frail form in the next room, she resolved to press on with the divorce and claim the peace she and her unborn baby needed. It was time to bury the lies of her past and reach for the future she'd begun to glimpse through her new job and the surprising kindness of Julian Carter. One thing was certain: Logan Hayes would no longer control her destiny. Weeks later, the final pieces began to fall into place. Walter's health stabilized enough for him to join a cardiac rehab program that greatly improved his prognosis. Sandra, relieved beyond measure, returned to baking pies for the local diner and humming old tunes in the kitchen. The once gloomy bungalow felt bright again, filled with gentle hope and renewed purpose. As for Logan Hayes, he faced a wave of lawsuits from disgruntled investors, along with the divorce proceedings initiated by Camila's legal team. Whispers suggested he might file for bankruptcy, his empire reduced to dust. Yet Camila refused to dwell on his downfall. She had spent enough tears and anguish on a man who had shown neither remorse nor compassion when she needed him most. Her focus now was on her baby, due any day, and on her growing role at Carter & Wells Innovations. Julian Carter's unwavering support had inspired her to push herself, and she quickly rose from administrative assistant to a specialized project coordinator for philanthropic events. Under Julian's mentorship, she discovered talents she never knew she had, negotiating sponsorships, designing marketing campaign strategies, and forging partnerships across diverse communities. One crisp autumn morning, while Camila was in the office finalizing details for an upcoming charity gala, she felt a sharp twinge in her abdomen. Instinctively, she recognized what it was. Her baby was ready to meet the world. Rachel and several colleagues rushed her to the hospital, calling Julian along the way in a flurry of excitement and nerves. Camila was admitted, her heart pounding with both fear and profound joy. Hours later, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Ava Grace Hayes, who let out a lusty cry the moment she entered the world. Cradling her newborn in her arms, Camila felt an overwhelming surge of love. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered promises of protection and devotion, a vow never to let Ava experience the pain and betrayal she herself had endured. To her surprise, Julian appeared at the hospital soon after, carrying an enormous bouquet of flowers. His demeanor was composed, yet his eyes flickered with genuine happiness for her. He offered a soft "congratulations," gently taking the newborn's tiny hand in his own. In that tender moment, Camila sensed a change in the air, like a new door quietly opening. The connection she felt with Julian was more than gratitude. It was respect, admiration, and a blossoming affection neither of them dared fully voice, yet. But the path ahead, it was theirs to carve, step by measured step. Dear friend, life rarely warns us before it breaks us. Sometimes it's not the loud crashes that change everything, but the quiet unraveling of trust, love, and the life we thought we had figured out. And yet, as the Stoics remind us, the obstacle is the way. What feels like the end might actually be the beginning of who we're meant to become. Camila's story isn't just about betrayal, it's about rediscovery, about rising from heartbreak, standing tall in the face of fear, and protecting what matters most when everything else falls apart. She didn't just survive, she transformed. And in doing so, she reminded us of something vital. You don't need everything to be perfect to begin again. You just need the courage to take one step. So if you're walking through your own storm, I hope you know this. You are not alone. You are not too late. And you are absolutely strong enough to write the next chapter. If Camila's journey stirred something in you, if it gave you hope, made you feel seen, or reminded you of your own strength, please take a moment to support this channel. Like the video so we know it resonated. Share it with someone who may need a gentle reminder that healing is possible. Subscribe for more stories that celebrate resilience, second chances, and the quiet strength inside us all. Thank you for being here. Truly. Stay strong, stay kind, and never stop believing in your comeback.